Welcome back to the Freedom Kickstarter podcast. So today's guest, we have something a bit different. We've got someone who is a property investor, speaker, and all-round entrepreneur. We have Emerald Fisk. So as always, I'll throw it over to the guests to introduce themselves. So yeah, Emerald, tell us a bit about yourself and what you do.
Hi, Mike. So I'm Emerald and I'm a property investor. I've been building my portfolio for the last 7 or 8 years. I'm also a speaker and trainer for one of the larger property investment teaching companies. And I also work self-employed in financial services. So I help other investors gain finance for their property portfolios.
Love it. So as we were talking about beforehand, quite a few sort of plates to spin at one time there. So be cool to kind of dive into like how you manage that basically. But first of all, kind of generic question, but how did you get started doing what you do?
Okay, so years and years and years ago, I was a personal trainer. I'm sure every entrepreneur in the world seems to be like, oh, it's a personal trainer. That was me. I went to a business event and I met a lady that was in property and she was like, oh, I'm a property investor. I build my portfolio using other people's money and I teach other people to do the same thing. I was nervous and a little bit weird. So I went straight up to her and went, hi, Tony, please can I be your stalker? She was like, yeah, no problem, as if this isn't weird at all. Sent me to one of the property investment training companies. They do the whole hard sale thing. So I invested heavily in myself, in my training. And I just learned how to raise finance from other people and then buy properties, do them up, rent them out. As I got better at doing that, eventually I started training to be a speaker. I really wanted to go back and help other people, do some mentoring, get on the stages. And then COVID hit. So I just learned how to speak from the stage. There was no events running. And then my mortgage advisor was like, Emerald, why don't you train up in financial services? And I was like, Joel, I've just spent 3 years getting myself out of a job, building a portfolio so I never have to work again. Why on earth would I want to do that? He was like, just give it a go. You'll be good at it. So got qualified, did that, absolutely love it. So I was totally wrong. And now I just seem to live in very organised chaos, spinning all of the plates and jumping from the stage, sorting out my clients and always developing a property somewhere along the line.
Amazing. So the mortgage stuff, what is it about that you love? Why was that the thing that kind of, got you really excited?
I thought it was a dead boring job, but actually I spend a lot of my time analysing other clients' deals and then gaining the funds so that they can develop out the properties. The industry is really, really fascinating. There's a lot of moving parts. I'm always learning. So I thought when I got into property, I was like, I want to be financially free. I'm going to build my portfolio. I'm going to sit on the beach all day, drink pina coladas and live my best life. And I think a lot of people have that dream in their own industry to work as little as possible. And I think that's totally not true. Most people want to be stimulated. And for me, I find financial services is really challenging and I love the daily challenge of making something fit with some of the challenger banks that are out there.
Well, I know we spoke about it a bit before, but that idea that it's everyone's dream to kind of just sit there and do nothing and earn passively and everything. But I just think if you're the kind of person who's going to work hard to get in that position, you're also not the kind of person who once they're there can just switch off and do nothing. Like you have to be productive, have to be doing something. Do you find yourself you're like always on and wanting to be productive?
Absolutely. Like, I think when you're building your business, you can't wait for it to stop. And then as soon as you make things stop, you're bored and you're like, where's the next thing? So I always say to people, like, you probably don't want to be financially free and sat on a beach. What you want is the choice to do what you want each day. And some of that is going to be work because most people like challenges and most people like to be mentally stimulated.
Yep, 100%. So going back to kind of initially starting in property then, what was it that made you go, do you know what? Actually, personal training is not really for me. I want to do property instead.
Oh, I hated being a personal trainer. Awkward. I loved sports. So I played quite a good level of rugby. And my whole life evolved around training sessions to be strong, to be powerful, to win. Like, I love winning. And because I was incredibly fit at the time, people in the gym would come up to me and be like, oh, can you train me? So in my head, I was like, oh, I can be self-employed. I can do what I want. I can train other people. I can do something that I love every day. I became a personal trainer, and then gym was like not my safe space anymore. It was like you go there and everyone wants to talk to you and everyone wants something from you. So it's not relaxing anymore. So I wanted a way out of personal training. And the reason I'd gone to a business event was I was like, oh, I'll just set up a gym and then I can own the business instead of be working in it, which now I know a lot about business, that would never have happened anyway. So as soon as someone spoke about property, I think property is one of those things everyone goes, I want to get into property, but it's something that wealthy people do or something that other people do. And as soon as I found out that there was a way that I could do it, I was just all in, very naively jumped straight in with 2 feet and just went for it.
So I remember, must have been what, 6 years ago maybe? Kind of, we had a conversation. I think I was looking at kind of investing in other people at the time, but I think you'd already moved on to doing some like bigger projects by that stage, and I guess that's reflected by the fact you said you went all in. So what was your kind of initial strategy to begin with, and how did you scale that up?
So we do something called buy, refurbish, refinance. And to put it really, really simply, we buy a property that needs work. So basically it needs a refurb. Maybe it's an older person that's lived in that property and everything's dated in the 1970s, something like that. We'll add value in some way. So we buy it in cash, do a refurb in cash, and then you try and refinance so that all of your money comes back out and you can move on to the next project. So I started doing that on little 2-bed terraced houses in Liverpool. So I did a lot of things wrong. Like, you don't really want to go out of your area because it's much harder to manage something that's 3 hours from where you live. And then I just moved on to doing like smaller blocks of flats or converting a commercial property into residential.
Nice. So was that something kind of you'd been taught to do, or was it just that seemed to make the most sense at the time? Like, what was the process for getting started?
Oh, okay. So I got taught to do that. So I'm a big believer in coaches, mentors in all different areas of your life. And I just went to somewhere that teaches you how to invest in property. And then round those circles, sometimes there's like wealthier people that want to invest in deals. And then sometimes there's people like myself that haven't got any funds, but have got the want and the perseverance, I suppose, to go out there and just make it happen. So for me, it was like get educated, find someone that's done what I want to do, and then just follow in their footsteps.
And you were pretty hands-on with the projects in the early stages?
I love knocking out knocking out the kitchens. I am so unskilled, you would not believe. And my builders are like, can you please leave this site and never come back? The last rip out I did, I do love a rip out, knocking down a conservatory. Honestly, give me a sledgehammer. It's so much fun. I created a leak in one of my own properties, didn't notice, flooded the place and cost myself extra on the refurb. So normally I'm best not on site.
Got it. And so I guess, did you scale quite quickly with that then? What was sort of how aggressive were you towards growth in that business?
Yeah, I was wildly aggressive, and I don't even know if I would have it in me to do what I did in my first year anymore. In After I'd had an offer accepted, I think it was like January 2018, my first purchase actually went through. Within the first 6 months, I'd purchased 5 properties using one investor's funds. I was managing all of the refurbs. I'd never managed a refurb before. The only property I'd purchased before was my own home. I'd never project managed before. It was absolute chaos, and I don't know if I would recommend anyone to scale that fast having no skills like I had. But we got there, we made it work, and we just moved on to further projects.
It's interesting because actually it's come up a few times now, people saying this is how I did it, and it is absolutely not what I'd recommend others to do. So I suppose looking back, do you think there was a better way to do it, or do you think it kind of had to be like that because it was just, you're getting started, you want to gain traction, just kind of do before you think almost?
I think it's particularly in property, there's risk, like things could have gone wrong, and maybe legal processes that I wasn't so aware of, and now I've got, maybe it's like the more knowledge you get, the more you think I wouldn't do that because the risks are higher. But when you're naive, you just crack on and do it because you don't know what the risks are, and it's just a massive balancing act all of the time. When you're naive, you get stuff done, And that helps you propel forward. But then the more you know, the more maybe risk adverse you can become. Or maybe for some people, the more they know, the more risks they can take because they feel like they're educated. Just for me, I think mentally it was just a lot. I was up in a different city, like I'd never been to Liverpool before. Suddenly I was up there viewing houses, buying properties. Maybe I could have bought in slightly better areas within that city, managing trades. I didn't know if they were doing a good job or a bad job because I didn't really know what one looked like. And luckily I had a really good team and they did do a good job for me, but they could have pulled the wool over my eyes and I just wouldn't have had a clue.
Any kind of massive mistakes or interesting stories from that time?
I I looked at the inside of one of the first properties I bought and I didn't look at the outside because it just didn't really cross my mind. And it didn't need a whole new roof, but it needed new tiles on the whole entire roof. And I bought 3 on that street, so all 3 needed new roofs. That blew the budget straight away. There was an issue with the title deeds that now I'm very aware of what that issue would be. Back then I just had no idea. So I was like, oh, it doesn't really matter. And if it had gone wrong, it would have massively mattered. Because it didn't go wrong, it was absolutely fine.
Got it. What advice would you give to someone who is in that position, apart from maybe do it a bit slower?
Enjoy it. I didn't enjoy like the first couple of years of my business because I was so stressed in trying to do more, be more, prove to people that I could make it. And actually, like, I could have had a lot more fun in my first couple of years. And I was just really hard on myself. Like, you're not doing enough, you're not raising enough finance, you're not meeting enough people, you're not offering on enough properties. And now I think I've got a more relaxed approach, which makes my whole entire life more fun.
Got it. And so then doing that, was it kind of at the same time you got started with speaking stuff, or was there like an end to the more hands-on development and then moving to speaking after that?
So I never stopped with a property. Like, I'm always viewing something, offering something, purchasing a property. Like, my sweet spot now is I like to buy small blocks of flats, you know, those big houses that have been converted, say, into 4 flats, 1 on each floor, and renovate those. So that's continually ongoing. And then I used to watch the speakers and I would just think that could never ever ever be me. And actually won an award. I thought I was going to die on the stage. You know, when you feel like you're stood in a puddle of sweat, but no one else would know. And I said obviously loads of times, and the person interviewing me went, well, it's not obvious to the audience. And I just died on the inside. So I was like, right, I'm going to train as a speaker and I'm just going to get better at it. And I forced myself to do it. And I used to drive to speaking gigs. This was maybe about, I'd been in property maybe 3 years at this point. So I'd drive to speaking gigs to talk about how to get started in property. And I would think to myself, like, really crazy thoughts like, oh, if someone just drove into the back of me, I don't have to get to the event and then I don't have to speak on the stage. But I almost thrived under, you're going to keep doing this until you stop hating it and you learn to enjoy it. And eventually I got to the point where I could get on stage and I didn't want someone to drive into the back of me on the way.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've never had that with speaking, but I have that sometimes with running when I'm really nervous about something. And it is like, oh, there's a curb there. If I just fell off that curb, I'd twist my ankle, and that would give me a reason to not do it. Or yeah, it's a very narrow street. If I just happened to step in the road and got hit by a car, no one would judge me for not not finishing that run. So yeah, quite morbid, but I do
Yeah,
I do
that was
understand
me.
that. Yeah. And did you have training and speaking, or sorry, training and coaching on the speaking, or was it just the sort of exposure therapy and just getting up there and doing it?
No, so I trained like for a week in full training, and then I spent a year under a mentoring program, refining my technique. But the problem with speaking is the only way you get better is by taking speaking gigs, failing, and just getting better as you go. And the nerve-wracking thing about speaking is you have to do it in front of people. But I also did like, oh, it feels really sickening, but I'd film myself and watch my videos and critique myself. And when you hear the sound of your own voice, you're like, do I actually sound like that? Yes, you do. And then eventually you get over it, and that's a really good way of getting better. Also, when I drove long distance, I'd do like an hour-long keynote on how to raise finance to my dashboard, because some things sound really good in your head, but when they come out verbally, they're not so good. So annoyingly, it's one of those things that's practice, 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 which nobody wants to hear.
Yeah, I've certainly found just on a smaller scale of watching myself back, it's those verbal tics that you don't realize you're doing. And I'm sure I'm probably doing some right now anyway. But my thing was always saying, quite a lot. And I just thought, that just sounds terrible. You need to stop that. So the idea of putting yourself on the spot and making yourself listen to what you're saying, is there any other big tips you give someone who wants to get involved in speaking?
Have a system and prepare. If you say you were just doing a 15-minute talk, like when you first start speaking, like that's a really, really long time to be speaking on a stage to an audience of people. If you practice that 15-minute talk and you did it every day for a week, you would deliver it so much better than if you just wrote your slides and think, oh, I'm just going to talk around these topics. Like, know exactly what you want to say, because as soon as you know your content, you can add in humour. Some of the best speakers that I know spend time watching comedians, not because we want to be comedians, because actually what we're trying to do is educate people. But when you're funny, when you're having a laugh with your audience, when you're able to say people's names from the audience, when it's not just a monotone, this is my presentation, this is what I'm talking about, people remember you and people engage more.
Yeah, I've definitely found, again, not being an expert at all, but I've got a talk that I've done probably 5 or 6 times now, and I'll confess I've never actually practiced it just on my own, but every single time it definitely gets better because, as you say, you know what's coming up. Even stuff like timing, it just gets easier with the timing as well, and you know there's a bit where you can make a joke there and people will laugh. Whereas I've did it once, made a joke, no one laughed. I was like, right, that's not going back in again. So I think learning that is key. And also just think as a general skill set, speaking is just so valuable. It's like, yeah, it's intimidating and nerve wracking, and I know that it's thrown around that it's the number one fear and all that kind of stuff. But in my mind, like if you can speak to an okay standard to a room full of people, like it just opens so many doors for you potentially.
Absolutely. And the other thing I have to remember in my head, particularly when I started, was people have either paid to listen to you speak, or they've attended that networking event, or they're in the room because you've got something that they want to hear. Nobody is sat there thinking, oh God, I hope they freeze and die on stage. Like everyone's going, people don't even know what's in your slides. So if you miss a sentence, if you forget the point of what you're saying, nobody knows what you want to say. So they have no idea that you leave the stage thinking, oh God, I should have told that story. People are sat in the audience hoping that you do your
Yeah.
best.
Yeah, and it's just so basic, but the whole idea of being nervous as well, like if you know what you're going to say, you will be less nervous. And I think that's something I see with a lot of people where they get up to do some sort of presentation and they haven't really rehearsed or practiced. And you think, well, that's kind of the main thing, really, because if you know your content, yeah, I get that it's scary standing up and you've got 50 people, 100 people, 500, however many, but you can control how well you know the presentation. And so if you can control that, it's automatically a bit less nerve wracking.
Absolutely. It's actually one of my pet peeves with Dragon's Den. And like people go on there and they've not rehearsed, and I'm like, sorry, you've got the opportunity to pitch to investors, to pitch to really good businessmen and women, and you haven't practiced every day for the last month. Like, what is going on? But there we go. I won't rant.
Outside of not practicing, any other sort of huge mistakes you see people make with speaking?
To spend more time on themselves than on the audience. So instead of saying things like, I did this and I did that and I'm so great, it's more like, can you imagine yourself doing that? Or have you put yourselves in the shoes of XYZ? Because then the audience can relate and then they are imagining themselves doing or thinking or being whatever you're talking about. Whereas some people make it about themselves. And even if the story is, even if the presentation, sorry, is about your story, you can already include the audience instead of just making it about you.
Got it.
So yeah.
Nice. And then I know we spoke about this a bit at the start, but in terms of balancing stuff, how do you go about balancing the speaking, the portfolios? I mean, we've not even touched on the sort of financial stuff that you've mentioned to me you're doing, but yeah, just generally, what have you got a system for doing all that, or is it just what needs to get done gets done and and everything falls into place?
Yeah, I have become highly organised, and I've never been organised in my life. And I think the more plates you spin, the better you get at spinning them. So if I haven't got anything on a Sunday afternoon, I like to look through my week and see what I'm looking to achieve. I do get up really, really early, so I am one of these 5 a.m. people. I'm not forcing it upon anybody else. I'm not saying that you have to do it to be successful, but I'm also useless after 7 p.m. in the evening. So I like to get up early, get good at delegating. At the beginning in business, I had to do everything and I needed to be in control, and no one was ever going to do it as good as me, particularly with the financial stuff. I've got admin support with that, which really, really helps me so that I'm not sat there glued to my laptop doing all of the admin. With property, you've got to learn to trust your builders and not be on site every single day, sort of micromanaging people. And then what the speaking has massively taught me is, if I'm on stage for a whole afternoon, I've got no access to my phone or my emails, and nobody dies in the 3 or 4 hours that you haven't got your phone. And I think that is a skill to learn, because when you start out in business, you're like always glued to it, and then you've got a text and you're like, I've got to solve that problem, I've got to fix this, I've got to sort that. No, you haven't. People can wait. And that was a massive skill for me to learn, is actually that think and wait, it's not as important as I thought it was originally.
I definitely think that's a big thing. Like, I had a running event the other weekend where I was just off my phone and laptop for 4 days straight. I think I came back and there were honestly, like, I had probably 400 emails and probably four of them required semi-immediate attention. But if I'd left them another 3 or 4 days, it was not the end of the world. And you're like, okay, actually, yeah, people don't need me as much as I think they do. I don't need to be as hands-on with things. I can kind of go away for a bit and let people do what they need to do, I suppose, provided you delegate properly. So delegation is definitely something I think a lot of people struggle with. What advice would you have around that?
Trust the process. Trust that other people are as good as you, and don't let your ego get so big that you think, I'm the only person in the world that can do this really average admin task. There's loads of other people that can do that for you, and quite often they can do it better than you. Start with small things, and then build up to giving people more autonomy over decisions in your business, and allow them to make mistakes. You can't just micromanage people to prevent them from making mistakes. You've got to allow them to learn from what they're doing as well. So yeah, delegation, I think, is a hard skill for a lot of small business owners.
And I suppose a lot of it comes down to probably doing some of the work up front. Because I know that I've spoken to people before and they say that the key thing is having stuff documented, so that it's not just all of a sudden you're doing this thing and you pass it over to someone else and expect them to do it. But like, if you're planning on doing it, spend a couple of months where you do document exactly how you do it, and then have kind of a review process in place for when you do hand it over, so that eventually you can then kind of come out of it. But I suppose a lot of people go, oh, I'm just going to hand that over to someone with no background processes, no ongoing monitoring, and then they kind of wonder why it goes wrong. Whereas if you've done the legwork up front, actually, that should probably mitigate a lot of that, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And picking people that are better than you. Like, I think at the beginning, your ego gets so big, you're like, no, I'm the best at all of these things. And then actually, the best view to have is, I'm a humble student to everybody. And if I can have around me people that are better than me in every single way, then that will only make my business better.
Yeah. So going back to the property, in terms of how you do things now, what would a typical project look like in terms of like timescales? I know you mentioned looking at places that are, small apartment blocks, that kind of thing. But what do you look for in terms of, like what the property's like, potential, that kind of thing? And then what's kind of the rough overview of a project?
Okay, so my favourite project is a block of 4 to 7 flats. And in your head, if you can imagine a semi-detached or terrace building that's really large, so back in the day it would have been quite a big family home, and it's been split into maybe 4 flats, one on each floor. So I've got a couple of these. I keep buying listed buildings, which is not recommended if you're starting out in property. So they're grade 2 listed, not grade 1, and they're beautiful. And we also recommend that you buy ugly ducklings, because they normally financially do better than the really pretty buildings. So I break all of my own rules all of the time. So at the moment, say I'm purchasing a block of 4 flats. It's in Gloucester. It needs renovating, so it's tenanted at the moment. However, I wouldn't allow tenants to live in that block if I owned it already. It's not nice. Everything's quite dated. Maybe it looks like there may be some sort of damp issues in places, so it needs a full refurb. I will purchase that building for £250,000. I've done a really creative deal on it, if you want to hear about the deal structure.
Yeah, go for
So
it.
I'm going to give the guy that owns it £50,000 on day one, and then he's having a deferred payment, so I won't give him the other 200 that I owe him until 18 months time. And that allows me time to evict the tenants, the process has already been started. So I know that there might be some hate from people for doing that, but they're not living in a nice standard as it is. Then I will renovate that building. So it'll probably cost me maybe 100 to 120 to bring all the flats up to standard. So we'll be doing things like adding new kitchens, new bathrooms, new heating systems. We'll be looking at the sash windows and probably getting them refurbed rather than putting brand new ones in, because that's easier. Then at the point that it's fully refurbed, we'll get some new tenants to live in there, and then I will refinance back out. So hopefully my end valuation should be around 475,000. So if I've done all of my numbers right, everything goes to plan, the refurb doesn't go over budget, I should be able to give the owner the rest of his money, and I can get all of my refurb money back out, and I can just move on to the next project.
Got it. That was going to be my next question. Actually, was how do you build in the fact stuff might go wrong?
You just know that it will. So you kind of need to have thick skin. Don't get stressed about it. Add about 10% to your budget. Maybe you'll need a little bit more. I'm really incredibly lucky. I've got good support of investors around me. I've also built my own portfolio with equity in it. So with the level of projects that I'm doing, I'm comfortable with the level of risk of things going wrong. I would have access to that money should I need it. When I started out, I was doing smaller projects like 2-bed terrace houses. And again, then I had access to the money that could go wrong on those smaller projects should I need it, if that makes sense.
And in terms of property strategy, I know people always talk about this is the best way to do it. Are there any, flip that question on its head, are there any property strategies you think are just not worth bothering with at all?
It depends on the person. So a lot of people are doing things like apart hotels and stuff like that now. To me, that's not property. That's a different sort of business. You're in the hotel industry, leisure, tourism, whatever you want to call it. So for me, I'm not saying that's a terrible strategy. I'm saying for me that is, because I don't want a moving parts business. So for me, I very much look at my property business like investment. I don't touch that business in terms of income. The money stays in there and it's consistently growing. So for me, my best strategy is buy to let, because we call it set and forget. Obviously you need to manage those assets, but it's probably the easiest strategy in terms of management. So I think there are no wrong strategies. I think there are wrong strategies for the individual.
And do you manage your own properties, or do you have an agent do it?
Yeah, so anything that's within Gloucester and Wales, so within an hour's drive to me, I manage myself. Anything that's up north, which is my earlier properties, most of them have started to be sold, so some I have sold, some are on the market. Those are managed by an agent because I can't physically manage them myself.
Got it. Makes sense. And then I suppose in terms of, again, kind of combining everything. So you mentioned you got the sort of doing the mortgage stuff as well. How do you then balance all of that with everything else you're doing?
So I've got a really good group of clients. All of my clients are investors like myself. We're all property developers. We're all doing good deals. For them, I'm just accessible on WhatsApp on the phone, probably more accessible than I should be. I tend to just advise them on the deal, find the finance for them, and then that's when the admin staff will come in to do all of the paperwork. And I just fit that in when I'm driving. I'll take phone calls. I've got a lot of repeat clients, people like myself that are constantly buying and building their portfolio. They're really, really easy to work with. I know all of their information. I know what they're looking to achieve. So for me, it's just, in the morning, straight on the laptop, into emails, get everything done. And then if problems come up in the day, they can call me.
And do you feel that with the mortgage stuff and the financial side of things, that's also helped you kind of with what you're doing with the developments as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really keyed in my knowledge, and it's made me feel more confident. So for me, it's more of a feeling of confidence than you need all of that financial knowledge. And then because I'm a glutton for punishment, I started doing further financial exams. I never did exams at school. Like, I didn't even really go to school. So for me, it's really weird that I'm actually enjoying learning, studying, and furthering my education. I think it's because it's something that's so fascinating to me, like how the wealthiest people in the world grow that wealth and how they keep the wealth, and how it's almost like there's all these secrets that you just don't get taught at school, and suddenly you're like, oh, that's how other people do things.
Well, I guess without getting too ranty about it, mainstream education doesn't really gear people up to know about finances and wealth and all that kind of stuff. Is there anything that, since going more into that rabbit hole, you found sort of surprising, or anything that you think people need to know about managing wealth or growing wealth?
I think anybody can do it, and I think some people feel like, even investing £10 a month in an ISA or something like that, that is worth doing, because compounding is fascinating, how something compounds over time. So I think investing is for everybody, even if you feel like it's not for you.
It's one of those things where, I remember setting up my pension when I was probably 20, 21, I think, and putting £100 a month in, and just thinking there's absolutely no point in this whatsoever. And then you look at it at 34 now, and you're like, okay, actually, I mean, I've increased my contribution since, but looking at sort of how that initial investment has grown, you're like, yeah, I can actually see why there was that advice at the time of, put this in your pension, or what's the whole phrase of the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, the second best time is today. For me, that's a massive thing for anything financial. It's like, it might seem like not that much now, but actually give it 10 years, that could be it's certainly not money that you would reject if someone offered it to you today.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. And I just think everybody should look at their finances. And I think money management is a topic that should be taught to more people. And I think it's really important. I'm not saying everybody needs to go and do property, but people need to do something that helps build their future, because nobody knows what's going to happen to them.
Mm. On that note, so you now a qualified financial advisor as well?
I'll get my exam results tomorrow for
Oh,
my
okay,
third
nice.
exam. That's my final exam. I've failed it 3 times, so hopefully this time. I actually fail it on spelling and grammar, which is horrendous. And they make you do the exam in, where you go to do your driving theory test on one of those computers, and you're not allowed to use spell check. Well, for someone like me, it's just like,
It seems quite antiquated.
yeah. So my financial advice, I would say, is good. My written English without the use of spell check is hideous.
Got it. What's the plan with the financial advisor qualification?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Um, Part of me wants to go and, manage a load of people's money. Part of me likes having studied for it. There's quite a lot of tax exams in it, so we're not allowed to advise on tax, but we have to have all of the knowledge. Everyone's like, oh, God, tax, boring subject. It is fascinating. And the reason it's fascinating is because it can save you as much money as what you can earn if you understand how the system works. So hopefully I'll be managing other people's money soon, but I'm not 100% sure yet.
What's something interesting about tax you found out? What should we be doing that most people aren't?
What we should be doing that most people aren't is actually what the big companies are doing, what we can't afford to do. So there's this really random book called Taxtopia, and it's the most driest sense of humour in the world, and it's hilarious. It tells you what all these different people, like what Lewis Hamilton did with his private jet, and then he posted on Instagram saying he was flying in it, but it should have been part of this company that he doesn't run. And I was like, and something that Starbucks do, and they have the rights to their brand is based in, I don't know, Amsterdam or somewhere, and then they have these tax circles where you see these big corporations not paying any tax. I'm not saying we should be doing that, but it absolutely fascinated me how these massive corporations manage to pay no tax. Something that we should be doing is I don't know. I don't know. I actually don't know the answer to that question. What should we be doing? Just making sure you're set up tax efficiently with your limited companies, and you're using all of your different trusts and ISAs and whatever things that you can invest in to.
I definitely think more and more, not to make it political, but I think as a small business owner, entrepreneur, however you want to put it, just the more of your money you can keep and not squander. Like, things are, in my opinion, getting a bit tougher for people. So I'm like all for the 1% things that actually a few of those add up to quite big gains ultimately, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just, getting educated. I think the best thing you can do for your tax actually is understand it. Don't just give it to your accountant and go, they know best. Sometimes they don't know best. So go and educate yourself, learn about it, see what investments can be made with your earnings or pension contributions or whatever it is to bring your tax bill down so that you can keep more of your hard earned cash.
Especially, I think, with a lot of businesses that people run nowadays, they're not traditional businesses. Yeah, I find a lot of accountants, like my accountant's great, but I think he's still limited slightly on some knowledge. A lot of accountants, though, they're not they're not really geared up for sort of modern businesses. Kind of, if you're online, work with different countries and that kind of thing. So, like you say, I think you have to do some of your own research at least to make yourself aware that, okay, perhaps I want to look for a second opinion or someone else who's a bit more specialist in it. Because otherwise, yeah, you're potentially giving up thousands every year that you probably don't need to.
Yeah, I think there's a massive difference between accountants that file your accounts and tax advisors. So sometimes you want to pay for an hour or two of a tax advisor's time and then take that advice to your accountant, who will then do what the tax advisor says. And that's probably more helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah. Saying about paying for people's time, I know that you've invested a lot in courses and mentoring and that kind of thing. What have you done over the years? Like, what's been super useful?
To have somebody that's always a couple of steps ahead of you. To have unpaid mentors. Like some of my favourite investors have got really large property portfolios. They don't purchase projects anymore because maybe they've got a family, maybe they feel like they've built up enough, and having refurbs on the go can be a bit stressful. And sometimes having those unpaid mentors that you just take out for dinner, have an open conversation with, you're not sort of woodpeckering them for information, but you're just learning from them. I would say they're some of my best mentors. Then having those paid people that keep you accountable. So I always used to tell myself, I'm a self-motivated person. I don't need accountability. I absolutely need accountability. So having a place that you can go once a month to work on your business, not in your business. Having someone come along and go, well, you haven't done this, this, and this, and allowing yourself to feel rubbish for not doing those things and then getting on with it. I think those are some of the best things that I've done. It's like when I was a personal trainer, I was like, oh, well, I know everything about fitness. I don't. I still need somebody to push me to lift heavier. You can know everything about it, but you still need that other person going, have you tried this? Have you thought about doing things differently? Actually, you can lift that weight when you're telling yourself that you can't.
Mm. Yeah, I've definitely found that having quite a few mentors and stuff over the years, I would consider myself fairly driven. But even I know if I put my hand in my pocket, I'm going to be more motivated. And if you've got someone there who's kind of expecting you to do something, one of the big things for me is that I want someone who I admire because I don't want to feel like I'm letting them down. And if they say to me, you should get this done, I don't want to be sat there in a month's time thinking, I've either got to avoid that person or I've got to send that awkward email saying, well, I've not actually done this yet. So no, I'm big on that as well. I think the unpaid mentors thing is very interesting. How would you go about finding those people?
If you meet enough people and you give your time and energy to other people, sometimes you can just find yourself in situations where older business owners that are retired, they enjoy going for dinner with you because they don't really want to be in business anymore. Maybe they don't want to work that hard, but they quite enjoy vicariously doing your business with you. And the way you find these people is really random. Like one of them, I walked their dog, and then I found out that they'd, I don't know, ran a financial services company, and then next thing you know, I'm having dinner with them, and maybe they wouldn't classify themselves as a mentor, and maybe it's not the correct official name for them, but I'm sat there having a conversation with them, and I'm like, wow, this is absolute gold dust that you wouldn't get anywhere else. Some of my mortgage clients, like I'm giving them advice on, how to get a development loan so they can develop this building into a hotel, but actually they've bought millions of pounds worth of debt. Back in the financial crisis, and they're always reading this newspaper that tells you which companies are going under, and then they're looking at buying them, and they don't know that they're giving you these little golden nuggets of information, and you're listening thinking, wow, like this is really cool. So I think it's just being open and honest and allowing yourself to go and meet people and have good quality conversations, be kind to everyone that you meet, and eventually you find yourself having dinner with someone fascinating.
Sometimes I think it is a case of just sort of being aware of who you're around as well. So I was at an event recently that was a guy called Sahil Bloom, and he put a picture up on screen of him and Tim Cook from Apple, and he didn't sort of say anything about it. And the guy he was hosting the event with, Daniel Priestley, said, like, you need to tell us the story about that because you can't just get Tim Cook as a mentor. And he said, well, I kind of did. He said, I used to go to the gym every morning at 5 a.m. and there were only sort of 5 or 6 of us in there, one of whom was Tim Cook. And he was like, I didn't know who he was, but I just used to say hi. Like, we used to have the odd chat and everything. And then he said about 6 months later, someone said to me, how on earth do you know Tim Cook? And he was like, oh, I didn't realize that was Tim Cook. And he said that all he did then was say to him, I'm really sorry, I didn't know who you were. If you've got 10 minutes one day, could I take you out for coffee? And Tim Cook was like, yeah, sure. You're a nice guy. You seem honest. You seem legit. So I'm not saying everyone's going to have a Tim Cook in their gym, but it's that kind of thing. Like, I've got ex-personal training clients who help me out a lot and have given me advice for free, who, I trained them 10 years ago, but they had sort of multi-million-pound businesses, and they're more than happy to go for coffee with you. So I think, as you say, I think having that mix of paid mentoring, which does keep you accountable and is a bit more formal, but then the unpaid agreements or either the informal ones, yeah, like you can get those relatively easily. I think you just have to be around enough people, as you say.
I hate to say it as well, but it's almost like upgrading your lifestyle.
Hmm.
When you go to a better quality gym, you spend time with people that can afford to go there, and then suddenly you're asking them what they're doing, or you're chatting about life and they tell you a bit about themselves. Whereas some of, like, I don't know, the lower quality gyms or coffee shops or hotels or whatever that thing is that you want to do, when you upgrade your lifestyle, you do meet a different caliber of
Yeah.
person.
Well, it's that whole thing. I can't remember who said it, but some business owner was asked a question of if you had £100 or $100 or whatever to build your business and you had absolutely nothing, you'd lost everything, what would you do? And he said something like, I go to the bar at the Ritz and I just buy a drink and sit there and talk to people. I'm like, yeah, that's not a bad way to do it. Like, I'd certainly take that investment over. I'm going to spend £100 on a Facebook ad or something.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just random people that you meet, and I'm a big believer of like fate as well. Like, you go to these places, you meet this certain person, and suddenly you're off on a different business venture. Or it's like when I went to a business event to set up a gym, and then suddenly I'm a property investor and speaking on stages. Like, that obviously was just meant to be in my life.
Yeah. One thing we talked about beforehand as well was that both of us are quite similar in that we're not very good at switching off. So, is there anything you've done to either make yourself better at that or just kind of come to terms with the fact that you actually do just quite like being busy and productive?
I think it took me a long time to come to terms with it. Like, I used to beat myself up, like, you shouldn't work so much. And now I'm like, well, if that's what I enjoy and that's what I want to do with some of my spare time, then I'm absolutely allowed to do that. So part of it, I think, is just growing older and allowing yourself to be. But also, even with my downtime, I'm still doing productive things. Like, I'm out running because that's bettering my health and my fitness. I think some of the, I don't know, going to a sauna, like hot and cold therapy, I know it's really fashionable. It's almost a cliche. But I'm like, you're not thinking of anything else. If you're in cold water, you're just thinking about how cold you are. And I find when you're sat in the sauna is, again, a great place to meet people, but it's also, you've got no electronic devices. I think sometimes it's forcing yourself to get away from electronics, get outside, whether that's walking, running, in a sauna, whatever it is, and that will bring you a little bit of downtime and peace. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't feel that people talk about relaxing, and I just think I'm not good at relaxing. As in, I kind of, when I relax, it's sort of extreme, as in, like, put me in a spa and I'll just sleep for like 4 hours straight, and that's basically it. But I'm in agreement that actually, I think sometimes just a technology break is a great way to do it, and you can still be productive with that. It can be go to the gym and don't look at your phone between sets, or it can be go out for a walk and maybe leave your phone at home, or anything like that. I think even just I found that reading, just going right, I'm going to read at least 10 pages a day, has been really good for just kind of disconnecting, really. And I'm always thinking it's a myth that you need to sit down and do nothing, because I don't think everybody does need to do that. I think if you're not the kind of person who really thrives off sitting down and chilling out, like, yeah, why bother with that, really?
Also, when my body really needs to sit down and do nothing, then that's what I tend to do, because I've just burnt myself to the point of not being able to do anything else. I'll spend a Saturday just like pottering about, go for a little walk, sit around, not do a lot, not spend that much time on my phone. Wake up the next morning and I'm completely rejuvenated. So I'm not going to force myself to do that every week, because that's the thing that you should do on weekends. It's just on the odd occasion, if I've done a lot of events, if I've just been really, really busy, my body and my mind just naturally switches off at that point.
Yep. So what's next for you then? I know we said about, more investing and more speaking, more financial stuff, but what's the grand plan?
So I don't think I have a grand plan. This year, my focus is on doing the same and being 10% better. Sometimes I think we're always striving to the next goal, the next thing. I'm like, why can't I just do what I do, but maybe do it better, do more of it, me be more present for my clients, when I'm on stage, be funnier, be, I don't know, more out there. I'm trying to put myself out there a lot more. It's actually, you mentioned Daniel Priestley. Off the back of him, that's why I was like, I want to get out on some podcasts. I'm trying to actually put myself out there a little bit more, but there's no grand plan. It's just more of the same.
Yeah, I'm very similar. I don't think I've ever set a massive big goal for anything. It might be, yeah, well, this year it was wanted to average a podcast episode a week. I can't remember what my other ones were. Oh, that read 10 pages of a book a day. And I was like, if I do that and do everything else the same, that's probably going to be quite a big needle mover this year. Yeah, people would definitely, in my opinion, overset goals really in terms of, oh, this year I'm going to write a book and I'm going to start a podcast and I want to earn 50% more and I want to, post 10 pieces of content a day across all platforms. You're like, you probably just slow down, to be honest. Probably don't need to do all of that really.
Yeah, I'd love to slow down, but I'm not capable.
Yeah. So we'll wrap up with the final 5 in a minute. But first of all, where can people find you if they want to reach out and know more about you?
So most people that follow what I'm doing follow me on Facebook, actually. It's just Emerald Fisk. That's my name. Some people follow me a little bit on Instagram, which again is Emerald Fisk. And that's the only places you can find me, really.
Perfect. Cool. I should put those in the description for the video. But final 5, I should try and remember them off the top of my head. But number 1, if you could gift any business, copywriting, marketing, or mindset book to someone, what would it be and why?
Oh, Living with a Seal, which is an old David Goggins book before he was known as David Goggins. And it's because it is so hilarious. It really made me laugh out loud. But it also just showed you that you can fit more into your day and you can push yourself harder than you think. And you kind of just get on with it and do it if someone's making you.
Was that the one where he lives with Jesse Itzler? Is that, yeah, I've listened to the audiobook of that and I do remember things like being made to sleep in a chair and that. Yeah, definitely.
It just made me giggle, but I learnt a lot at the same time.
Yeah, love it. Good suggestion. Second question would be, we're going for coffee and I'm buying. What's your order?
Oh, oat latte.
Oat milk is getting really popular with these answers.
Okay.
You can still have it. It's fine. It's just a comment.
I stopped drinking cow's milk like years ago, and I've never gone back to it.
Okay, so you were there before it was cool then.
Yes. Yeah.
Nice. Question number 3: you're hosting a dinner party and you can invite 3 people, living or dead. Who are you going to choose?
Elon Musk. David Goggins. I don't know why he keeps coming up. Sound like a fan. I'm not that much of a fan. And a lady called Jade Holland Cooper.
Cool. Just tell us a bit about her, because I wasn't aware of her before you mentioned her.
So Jade Holland Cooper is a fashion designer. She's actually married to Julian Dunkerton, who used to be the owner of Superdry. He might still be the owner, but he founded that company. And she has set up a high-end British fashion brand. She's based in Cheltenham, which isn't far from me. And she is going down the route of being like Chanel, that sort of branding. Her clothes are really good quality. She's got 2 small children. She's pushing her shop. She's got a boutique. They've got restaurants. She is a fascinating entrepreneur, and you would have seen some of her clothes because Kate Middleton, she wears a lot of her clothes, so you would have seen it there in pictures.
Love it. Question number 4: you're in charge of the internet and you can delete one social media platform. What one are you going to choose?
I think I'm going to say Twitter, which is now X, isn't it?
That might be an interesting conversation with Elon Musk at your dinner party then.
Yeah, I'll let him know. Elon, we're shutting down X.
Got it. And then final question: what one piece of advice would you give to someone who's starting out who wants to get where you are?
Go for it. Enjoy yourself. Love every second of what you do. Meet as many people as you possibly can. And when you're meeting people, don't just take from them. Give as much as you can back.
Amazing. Fantastic advice. Love it. Awesome. Thank you, Emerald. Really enjoyed that. I shall put the links I said in the description. Thank you to everyone for watching as well. Any comments, leave them down below. I'll put all the FKS links there as well. So the free templates, the free class and the course. If you wouldn't mind liking, subscribing, all that usual stuff, that would be amazing. And I will catch you on the next episode.